Recently, I was listening to a podcast. It was all about behavioral change and the science of goals. I was kind of in a different place. I was like, I don't really want to do goals. I want to do intentions and clarity. Visualization, having goals, but making them hard enough to be a stretch, a soft stretch, not a hard stretch, but easy enough so you can achieve them. So you have to make them at least a little bit achievable, because then that'll keep you motivated. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leading Below the Surface podcast. I'm your host, LaTanya Wilkins, award-winning author and executive coach. So most of you that follow me on LinkedIn, I'm at LaTanya Wilkins on LinkedIn, may have seen that I recently published an article as a LinkedIn newsletter, and it was kind of like a year-end reflection of all the things that I learned in 2025. And I focused on things that would help all of you as well, not just things that helped me as I move into the new year. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is the reflections that I learned from 2025, how you might be able to learn from those reflections as well, and then ground yourself into 2026 with some intention and clarity. And that's really what it's all about. So before I get into this conversation, I just want to say, if these conversations are helpful, please please subscribe, especially on YouTube. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple or audio form only, please go and follow our YouTube channel. It's Change Coaches. And I really appreciate that. I'll also put that information here in the show notes. So recently, I was listening to a podcast. Some of you probably listened to the Huberman podcast. I was listening to it on behavior. It was all about behavioral change and the science of goals, which I'm very nerdy. I really absorb all that up. And this year, I was kind of in a different place. I was like, I don't really want to do goals. I want to do intentions and clarity. But there were a couple of learnings from that podcast that didn't make me change my mind entirely, but made me reconsider a couple things. Number one, he talked about visualization. And visualization, when you look at the science, it only goes so far. So you'll probably hear a lot of coaches talk about visualizing your dream, visualizing will help you manifest. It does, but just to a certain point. And the point that helps is when it's something new and you're visualizing what success looks like. But what was interesting and what I learned from this podcast, because I'm also a big fan of positive psychology, but one of the things I learned is actually visualizing the negative, and the negative that could happen is actually good. So that'll prevent you from making obvious mistakes, which we would not have known, right? And so that doesn't mean that you go out and you're thinking about, let's say you're thinking about improving your business, or maybe like by 10% next year, or you're thinking about getting a new job next year, or you're thinking about taking on a new hobby next year. What that's saying is, it's not like, oh, let's take the new hobby. It's not that, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to find anything. I'm not going to be able to find the time. Oh, this is over. It's not that, but it's thinking about things in a sequence. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to learn this new hobby. This is the new hobby. Here's where I'm going to take the hobby. Here's where I'm going to invest in it. Here's what could go wrong. Like, the things that could go wrong, I put too much on my plate. The hobby isn't going how I think, and I might want to give up, right? So it's looking at that stuff instead of, thinking of everything that's going to start you before you stop, because that's, as we know, that's called negativity bias. The other thing that I really that I really enjoyed that he talked about was the science of goals, and having goals, but making them hard enough to be a stretch, a soft stretch, not a hard stretch, but easy enough so you can achieve them. So you have to make them at least a little bit achievable. It's interesting because I actually was able to think about this and frame this in my own way, where when I have lofty goals, like last year, I had a really big goal for fourth quarter because there were, a lot of the quarters were fluctuating. 2025 was a very interesting year, to say the least. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Instead of like going for like double, like I'm going to double this. It was like, okay, I'm going to increase this by 50%. And it felt like an attainable goal, but it felt like a stretch, but I could do it. I could do it with a lot of things in my control. The stretch would have required a lot of luck. We always did a little bit of luck in that equation, but that would have required a lot of luck. Thinking about that, and that's a really good way, that's a good litmus test, is thinking about how much luck will be required. And we get lucky, right? And that's like, you think about like great sports teams, you think about great musicians, you think about celebrities, they all have some form of luck, but that's not always a given. It's like making space for that luck to happen. But as you're thinking about your goal, the litmus test, is it achievable? And to what extent is it a stretch? And if it's a stretch where it requires a lot of luck, like 50%, 60% luck, no, that's probably like a far stretch goal. Doesn't mean you can't do it. But again, you want to have achievable, because then that'll keep you motivated. With goals, and that's not one of the lessons, we're going to get into lessons here in a minute. If you're going to do goals, and I do goals, just do a couple and do those quarterly. I love quarterly goals. The other thing with goals, one of the things I've been doing a lot of is reflecting before I come up with any goals or any intentions or clarity, because that's giving me the clarity. And so instead of sitting down doing a vision board, which is what a lot of us do, instead of sitting down doing a vision board, it's going back to your previous year, seeing what you're doing, like little things like, oh, last year at this time, I was at a yoga retreat. And these were the things that I learned. I really opened myself up. I started thinking about how I felt at that time, what my goals were at that time. And so going back, I also was able to see like how I structured my workload. And what was really interesting is at the end of first quarter, or towards the end of first quarter, I went on one more trip. I went on a warm trip to Cabo, and I just kind of was on the beach and I reflected, I opened myself up. And then after that quarter is where a lot of things really opened up, and that like the clarity stuff. And really, that's when we brought in our first anchor client ever here at Change Coaches. This is also an article on LinkedIn. So if you don't follow me now, go ahead and follow me, LaTanya Wilkins, on LinkedIn, or Change Coaches on LinkedIn. You can see the full article there. Also put that in the show notes. And again, if this is something that you like, that you think someone else might be interested in, please pass it on. Follow, especially subscribe, especially on YouTube. When I was writing this article, I was kind of going back to last year, thinking about some of my accomplishments, but also the big loud accomplishments, but also the quiet accomplishments. I had a lot of quiet accomplishments, a lot of quiet movement in 2025. It was probably, in that way, it was probably one of the most successful years I've ever had, with building, in terms of building community, in terms of clarity, in terms of where I'm taking Change Coaches, in terms of where I'm taking my life, all that stuff, living below the surface, all that stuff, which I wrote Leaning Below the Surface, the first edition, in 2021, and now it's 2025, and I finally feel like I'm truly living below the surface. So it happens, it just takes time. All right, so the first thing that I learned is, and folks, you might even want to have a pen, sheet of paper out, take some notes as I'm going through this, because at the end, I'm going to leave you with a few prompts so you're able to reflect on this on your own time. First thing I learned was to trust my body and my gut. I'm laughing and I'm chuckling because that was like a release laugh. Like, oh my gosh. And also a LaTanya, wow, how this took you so long laugh. Like I'm laughing at myself, like, and how long it took me to do this. And um, I will tell you that this year, listening to my body, um, just that small thing has probably like, maybe that's what 20% of this list. I have 5 things I'm going to share with you. So that's 20% of this list, but it's created 80% of the results that I've had this year. So trusting my body. What does that mean? Well, I guess I really didn't know what it meant. I've been coaching since 2018. I've read somatics books. I took somatics classes, coaching classes. I consider myself functional at somatics. I'm not a somatic coach, like deeply, I would say, but I do bring somatics into my practices. I know some people dive head first, they're all somatics. That's not, I do bring somatic practices into my coaching and into coaching below the surface. The reason why I shared that is because I guess I really didn't know what it meant to connect with your body. Let me explain that. Let's go back to a few years ago. A few years ago, I started doing yoga. And when I started, I was trying to figure out a new fitness routine. I didn't really like what I was doing. And I was doing a lot of boot camps and it was just kind of hard on my body and it made my mind go fat more quickly. Actually found a yoga studio. So I signed up for ClassPass. I tried out and I signed up for a new yoga studio. And through that time, over the last few years, after joining that studio, it's kind of ebbed and flowed where, no pun intended, folks, but for real, it ebbed and flowed. And when I first started, I was doing a lot of classes. And then I kind of signed up, like I was traveling a lot for work, for my business, for client work. And so then I kind of went to two days a week. And then I went back up and then I hit my 250th class this year. Why am I telling you this? Because yoga was really how I've learned to connect with my body. Again, I'll say that again. Yoga is really how I've learned to connect with my body, which is interesting because I've done all kinds of stuff throughout the years. I've run throughout, I was a runner at one point. I've always been pretty active, but running, boot camps were what I was doing for, up to the years, like I would say 2016, 2015 to 2022. And then that's when I added in yoga, 2022-ish. And all those things didn't really help me connect with my body because what I was doing is rushing and cardio instead of slower movement. And I was always afraid that doing slower movement wouldn't have the same results. And I'll say that again, I was always afraid that slower movements would not have the same results. What's really funny is, or what's really interesting is that was the same thing with my business, is I thought more effort, faster would create more results. And I found the opposite this year. And so how did yoga help me connect with my body? Well, it helped me slow down. It helped me know what needed attention. I also was doing another thing that really helped me is energy work, which helped me connect with different parts of me and outside of me, and have alignments within. There's a lot of healing that happened in the energy work as well. And so I don't want to get too much into that because it's kind of abstract. I'm happy if any of you are considering that. I'm happy to chat about it, or I'm happy to do an episode on that at one point if you'd like that. But another thing that I added was weight training, which again, slow, multiple reps, growth over time. So all those things not only have been like the theme of this year, but also just allowed me to connect with my body. And how does that show up? Well, it's like, I know, for example, there was a potential client that came to Change Coaches, and I was sitting down with them and I was hearing what they were looking for. And I just said no. And I said no because my chest was tight and I could tell that work was going to be a bad client, and they were going to want a lot more out of the work. They had unrealistic expectations. So again, I wasn't trying to push and go fast. I was going slow and listening and connecting with my body. I also, many of you know this because I've talked about this publicly, but in 2024, I got divorced. I was in a relationship for a very long time and it just wasn't working for a long time. And there was nothing wrong with either of us. We just weren't a good match. And I think really being able to be quiet and listen to my body helped me see that. There were also friendships that I walked closer to, that I stepped more into. And there were friendships I stepped more out of because listening to my body. And it was like the energy work helped me be able to pick up others' energy as well. And so I was able to see, okay, energetically, this is where I'm at right now. And it's not like that forever all the time, but it's just being able to connect with your body. So I'm going to leave you with a few prompts at the end. But before we go to number 2, I just want to leave you a quick one. But just maybe on that sheet of paper, jot down, what are some of the things that you do to connect with your body? What does that look like? A lot of us connect with our minds, and you might be, through meditation or other things, but that's fine too. But what are you doing to connect with your body? And I know that all of us aren't able to do everything, right? So it could be as simple as a walk. It could be as simple as some stretching, but whatever. It doesn't have to be, for us that are able-bodied, it doesn't have to be anything, like I said, real harsh on our bodies, which is, the irony is, like, even with my fitness, I've seen better results with going slower and more intentional. And again, I'll say that again. I've seen better results, slower, more intentional. The second one, and I'm going to attribute this to a couple of books and also YouTube videos that I recently watched. I came across a concept called manic manifesting. And some of you probably know I'm very into manifesting. One of the reasons why I made such a big shift in my life was reading books about the law of attraction, understanding that. I'm not saying that's everything, it's just a piece of it. And some of you are probably like, wait, you started with science and there's not a lot of science around the law of attraction. Well, I think I beg to differ, and I could talk about that again on another episode. But it doesn't have results on its own, but there are other things. If you pair them, I think you're more likely to have results. So manic manifesting. So manifesting, what does that look like? Well, I manifested a lot of things this year. Like when I went back and I looked at my journals from the yoga retreat last year, one of the things that I manifested was building soul connection. So let's just talk about that. What does that mean? Well, ever since COVID, and when I made that big shift in my personal situation, I was like, gosh, I wrote this book about below the surface leaders, like real connection. That's something I really like. And that's something that just kind of makes me tick. Like, why isn't my community below the surface? And so I asked for soul connections, and not just with friends and family and romantic partners, but also with clients, right? Just soul connections, like clients meeting. My goal is that when people meet me and my clients meet me, they're like, yes, we need to work together. And I'm feeling that too. So what does manic manifestation mean? Well, let's go back to one of my manifestations was like last year, I had made a lot of changes in my business. And so this year I was like, okay, this year I want to start seeing those changes come to life. And I want to start seeing an increase in revenue, right? What was interesting is I saw some progress, but it wasn't in the ways that I thought. Again, it was more larger anchor clients, bigger, like opportunities to make bigger impacts. But it wasn't more in the ways that I thought it would be. Like it was, again, slow, steady reps. I was finding I had this realization, and that the reason why I was able to have this realization is because number one, I was connected to my body, but I had a realization that when I got to third quarter, it wasn't going fast enough. It was because I would abandon a goal. Like I'd start working on something. I had 3 clients in the pipeline, or 3 people I was talking to, for example. I was like, oh my God, I have to close one of these. And it was like, again, I was thinking about it transactionally. And it was like, if I close at least one of these, then I'll believe it. Or coaching below the surface. If I enroll this many participants, then I believe this will happen. Then this is legitimate. No, that's manic manifesting. Because when you don't reach your goal, then you get manic. Like the whole thing about manifesting is energy. Are you manic manifesting? Do you have goals? Like again, coaching below the surface is a good one. I need to have this many. And I was like, what if I don't? Then it's like, oh, this isn't real. And then you're pushing everything away. Number 3. Oh my gosh, I love number 3. The next step is right in front of you, folks. Again, I'll say that again. The next step is right in front of you. this lesson has happened in so many ways. Like I said, I think even like our business strategy has evolved to working with clients deeper, like doing cool things, um, getting below the surface with them, being able to create sustainable change. And, instead of going out and searching for clients, what I was seeing is, oh, I already have all these folks, like these below the surface leaders around me. That was amazing. And so I just stuck with them and it really worked out very well. There were also situations where, again, I manifested the soul connections. There were two people that I was like, oh, they're already in my life. And that those were deeper connections. And one of them actually ended up being a really close confidant during my divorce. And they were getting divorced at the same time. So you don't have to go out and look for stuff, folks. Like, are you going out searching? Before you go out searching, what's right in front of you? I'll use this metaphor. You want to go out to eat, right? But there's like the other day I wanted to go out to eat. I wanted to go get something like a treat. But then I looked at my refrigerator and I had all this stuff I can make and I made a delicious meal, right? Like all of that was in front of me. And I was like, oh, I could actually, if I just slow down and I take a minute, that I could actually make this delicious meal. So there's a lot in front of you, and asking folks that you trust, like for referrals and like what's right in front of you. So thinking about what's right in front of you first. And if that person that wants to have a new job or wants to take on a new hobby, instead of searching for that hobby, what's right in front of you? Like, what have you always wanted to do? One of my friends, she was talking about a reunion with herself. And I love that. I love that metaphor. And the reunion with herself was reading. So there might be something that you started a while back. Maybe it's time to dust it off and it's right in front of you. Before we do number 4, do you have clutter in front of you? Like, what's cluttering your life? Like, is it manic manifesting? Is it number 2? And thinking about like things that might be cluttering or pushing things away in your life. Like maybe instead of just spending some time like with yourself, you're doing something because you feel left out or you have FOMO. So think about that too. Number 4, endings are a part of life. I'll say that one again. Endings are a part of life. And this took a long time for me to accept because when I got married in 2020, I never thought I would be divorced, right? And, I just didn't, I really didn't want that ending, but it was a necessary ending. This ending created space. The other thing that I will say is some endings are chosen, some are not. Sometimes the universe chooses endings for you. Other higher powers do that. And we don't know. Like for some of you that may have been laid off or like you have a big life change, loss, death. Those are endings we didn't choose. And endings are a part of life. I mean, I'm speaking from someone that has had a lot of loss in my life, like family members. I think with endings, it's like one of the things, and let's go into number 5. Like we'll talk about these two dually, because number 5 is healing does happen. Again, number 5, healing does happen. So let's go back to number 4 and number 5 and how these two work in tandem. But, if it's a loss ending, you got to heal. You got to give yourself time to heal from it. And again, I think it's funny how all these work together, because number 2, the manic manifestation, sometimes we try to be manic about getting through things. And we try to be manic about the time that things are supposed to move in. And they don't move fast. Sometimes things don't move fast. With that, what are some things that might need to end in your life? Like, are things that you've thought about ending? And I'll go back to my relationship, like the long-term relationship I was in. I had thought about it for years. And I felt guilty to think about it. But those are probably the things you need to end. All endings aren't permanent, but it's sometimes it's like you're not acknowledging yourself if you don't end things. And, a lot of times I don't end things because I think about the healing time. Again, like let's use the metaphor of just getting into your body and the slower reps, the strength building. It's going to open up space for you to do that. And it's over time. And honestly, it can go better than you think. I think if you holding on to things is more hurtful in the long run than letting them go. I have a friend that's going through a breakup right now. She thought she was going to marry this person. She's at the age where, she might want to have a family. And so it's just been really sad. And so one of the things I told her to accelerate her healing is just cry, just let it, just acceptance. And I'm just letting it out, just crying. And that's really helped her. And that really helped me, was the acceptance that endings are a part of life. Number 5, healing does happen. Back to that. It's not always loud or obvious. Like one day this year, I woke up and I was like, oh, I've healed. Some things are just easier. I noticed that I wasn't going back to bad habits. I noticed I was just letting things go and just moving along and just able to recognize things that did not work for me. That was one of the things when I stayed too long in my last relationship, I was in 2024, when I stayed too long, I didn't even know that I had healed. And it was really hard. That's why it's important to have endings, because you don't really know how far you've come until you've had the ending, right? And again, endings don't always have to be permanent. They could evolve things. This quiet healing really counts, and and that's just as big. Like that again has created a lot of the results that I've had. Just little reps that went into the healing. That started, in 2023 when I hired. I made a large investment in my business coach, and then continuing to throughout the years, like I didn't realize that I was healing through him, right? I was healing through yoga. I was healing through body movement. I was healing through therapy, which probably a lot of us go through. I was healing through those soul connections, through energy work. So there's all these little things, these micro healing things or activities that kind of built up. And it wasn't in the way that I thought. So again, if you really like this podcast, I'm going to start closing, and I'm going to close with 3 prompts. Please, again, subscribe on YouTube, especially. That's really where we're going, folks, in 2026. I'd love to see more of you there. What are the 3 prompts? And I've kind of talked about these already, but get your pen and sheet of paper out. But these are 3 things you can reflect on to really start your year strong. Again, maybe quarterly goals. Like I said, quarterly goals that are attainable, but a little bit a moderate stretch. So the first prompt I will say is, what is your body telling you that you might keep overriding or ignoring? And especially about endings. Again, what is your body telling you, especially about endings, beginnings, endings? What are you trying to force right now? So that goes back to the manic manifesting. So for those of you that, let's use the job, maybe you want a new job, maybe you want a promotion in 2026. What are you forcing? Like, what are you manic manifesting? Are you like, oh, I need 2 interviews by the end of next month, otherwise I'm never going to find a job? Again, we go there. Like I said, with the science earlier, visualize it first, and then visualize what could go right and then what might go wrong as you're going through this. But also, if you're manic manifesting, like think about the if-then. If it's if-then, then you're manic manifesting. As with number one was, what does your body keep overriding? I want to hit home the ending piece. Like, what are some endings that you need to have? Like, be honest with yourself. And those endings, like, again, folks, usually the ending you've thought about before, and then you've talked yourself back into it. And it could be an ending in a relationship. It could be an ending, like maybe you run a business, maybe you need to let a product go. It could be an ending like a friendship. It could be an ending of lots of things. Like maybe it's a habit. But what are some endings, some things that you just need to let go of? Maybe some things that have been making you comfortable for some time. Today, folks, we talked about some of the things I learned in 2026, how to take it forward. We talked about goals, setting goals. I brought some science in. We talked about gaining clarity and intention in 2025 for 2026. Thank you so much for listening today. If you want to learn more, go to the show notes and you could read the full article. And we'll see you next time, folks.